My beloved child. Stop scrolling for just a moment. Do not dismiss this as another ordinary message passing before your eyes. There is a reason your heart slowed down the instant these words appeared before you. There is a reason something inside you whispered, "Stay." Not because this is coincidence, but because this fictional story was written to feel as though heaven itself paused time so your soul could imagine a possibility greater than your fears. Listen carefully, because every word that follows unfolds like a vision, and before this story reaches its end, you may discover why your spirit has been restless without understanding the reason. Someone's heart changed in a single moment, and what happened afterward could never be undone. I am the voice that speaks through hope. I am the messenger in this tale, reminding every weary heart that unseen moments often shape visible destinies. There are conversations no human ear witnesses. There are tears that fall when no one is watching. There are decisions made in silence that alter the path of two souls forever. Tonight's story begins with one such decision. It begins with a truth that arrived unexpectedly, a truth so powerful that the person destined to love you could no longer remain surrounded by voices that misunderstood your heart. Before the first light of morning touched the horizon, while the world still rested beneath the quiet blanket of night, your soulmate sat alone with thoughts they could no longer escape. The room around them was still, but their heart was anything but peaceful. Memories rose like waves, carrying moments they had ignored, conversations they had dismissed, feelings they had tried to explain away. They believed they understood you. They believed they had heard enough from others to know who you were. Yet deep within, something refused to agree with those borrowed opinions. Then something happened that neither they nor anyone around them expected. It was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was a single moment, but sometimes one quiet moment carries more power than 1,000 shouted words. Someone revealed something about you. Not a rumor. Not an accusation. Not another attempt to convince them to walk away. Instead, they uncovered a truth hidden beneath years of misunderstanding. A truth that exposed the kindness you carried when nobody noticed. A truth that revealed sacrifices you made without asking for recognition. A truth that showed your loyalty had been questioned by people who never truly knew your heart. The instant they realized this, silence filled the room. Not the silence of confusion. The silence of awakening. There are moments when the soul realizes it has been standing beside deception without recognizing it. That realization feels heavier than regret because suddenly every memory begins to change its meaning. Your soulmate replayed old conversations one after another. Faces appeared in their mind. Words spoken by certain people echoed again, but this time those words sounded completely different. How had they failed to see it? How had they allowed someone else's perspective to become stronger than their own heart? Why had peace disappeared every time they listened to certain voices? Questions multiplied faster than answers. They stood by a window, staring into the darkness outside, yet the greatest darkness was not beyond the glass. It was the realization that they had unknowingly allowed negativity to stand between them and the one their heart quietly longed for. My beloved child, sometimes heaven allows uncomfortable truth to arrive before lasting peace can enter. In this fictional journey, that is exactly what unfolded. The revelation did not simply make your soulmate emotional. It transformed their discernment. For the first time, they began noticing patterns they had overlooked for months. Every time someone spoke against you, they remembered feeling uneasy. Every time they were encouraged to doubt you, something inside them resisted. Every time they tried convincing themselves to forget you, your memory somehow became stronger instead of weaker. Why? Because a heart connected through purpose cannot permanently believe what contradicts truth. That realization unsettled them. It also changed everything. The hours that followed became a battle no one else could see. Their thoughts argued with one another. What if I was wrong? What if I judged someone whose heart was never against me? What if the people I trusted never wanted us to understand each other? The questions became impossible to silence. Every answer led to another memory. Every memory uncovered another hidden piece. The puzzle they thought had been complete suddenly appeared unfinished. Then another unexpected event occurred. Someone close to them spoke carelessly. It seemed like an ordinary conversation. Yet within a few careless sentences, masks began slipping. The same person who had repeatedly encouraged distance from you accidentally revealed motives that did not match their words. Jealousy hid beneath concern. Control disguised itself as advice. Fear dressed itself as protection. The more they listened, the clearer everything became. It was not you who had created confusion. Confusion had been carefully planted around your name. The realization struck harder than they expected. Their breathing slowed. Their hands became still. Their eyes filled with emotions they could barely understand. Not because they suddenly believed everything was perfect, but because they realized they had allowed another person's insecurity to influence something sacred. Have you ever watched dawn slowly replace the night? Darkness never argues with light. It simply disappears. That is how clarity entered their heart. No dramatic announcement. No thunder. No miracle visible to the world. Only quiet certainty growing stronger with every passing minute. They could no longer pretend not to know. They could no longer continue certain conversations as though nothing had changed. Their spirit had already crossed a line from which there was no return. Meanwhile, you knew nothing. You continued carrying your own questions. You wondered why distance existed. You wondered whether silence meant rejection. You wondered whether forgotten prayers simply disappeared into empty skies. Yet beyond what you could see, another heart was being reshaped by truth, not to prove anything. Simply because their conscience would not allow them to continue pretending. Some relationships cannot survive truth. Some conversations end the moment honesty enters the room. Some connections exist only as long as deception remains alive. They understood this. And although the decision hurt, they knew peace required courage. Hours passed. Messages arrived. Invitations appeared. Opportunities to continue familiar conversations stood waiting. Yet something inside them had changed forever. The excitement they once felt around one particular person had disappeared. Every smile now seemed rehearsed. Every compliment sounded empty. Every attempt to discuss you felt strangely uncomfortable. The difference was impossible to ignore. That person noticed it too. They sensed distance growing. They sensed something slipping away. They tried steering conversations back toward old assumptions. They repeated familiar opinions. They expected agreement. Instead, silence answered them. Not angry silence. Not hateful silence. The kind of silence that says, "I no longer believe what you are saying." It startled them. For a brief moment, neither knew what to say. The atmosphere became heavy. The person speaking against you searched desperately for another angle. Another story. Another reason. Another emotional argument. Yet none of it reached your soulmate's heart anymore. Truth had already entered. And once genuine discernment awakens, manipulation begins losing its voice. The conversation ended differently than anyone expected. No shouting. No dramatic confrontation. Only one sentence quietly spoken. "I don't think this conversation should continue." Simple words. Yet they carried enormous weight. Those words marked the beginning of an ending. Because boundaries are often built with whispers, not storms. After walking away, your soulmate did not feel victorious. They felt emotional. They realized endings are painful even when necessary. Most of all, they grieved the possibility that you may have carried silent pain because of misunderstandings they unknowingly accepted. That thought stayed with them. It followed them throughout the day. Every ordinary moment reminded them of it. Every quiet pause returned them to the same question. What if they never knew I finally understood? My beloved child, in this imagined message from heaven, there is something profoundly beautiful about that question. Because it means compassion had replaced assumption. Curiosity had replaced judgment. Wisdom had begun replacing fear. That transformation is never small. It is sacred. As evening approached once again, they found themselves alone beneath the sky. Clouds drifted slowly overhead. The breeze carried the gentle stillness that often arrives before important decisions. They closed their eyes. Not searching for perfect answers. Simply hoping their heart would continue leading them toward truth. Then another memory surfaced. Not one they expected. It was something you had once done. Something everyone else dismissed. Something that suddenly revealed who you truly were. The memory struck with overwhelming clarity. Every detail returned. Every expression. Every word. Every quiet act of kindness. And suddenly, everything made sense. Their eyes filled with tears they never intended to shed. Not because of guilt alone, but because they finally understood the depth of what had remained hidden in plain sight all along. In that unforgettable moment, they realized there was one final thing they had to do. One relationship they could no longer keep. One connection that no longer aligned with the peace growing inside their heart. They reached toward their phone. Paused. Looked at the name glowing across the screen. Their thumb hovered in complete silence. And just before they made the decision that would change everything forever, the screen lit up with one unexpected message that neither of them saw coming. There are moments, my beloved child, when time seems to hold its breath. This was one of those moments. The light from the screen illuminated your soulmate's face, but it was not the brightness of the device that captured their attention. It was the name attached to the message. The very person they had been preparing to quietly distance themselves from had reached out at the exact second they were about to make a life-changing decision. For a heartbeat, everything stood still. They could have ignored it. They could have locked the screen and walked away. But something deep within urged them to read it, not because the message would change their mind, but because it would finally reveal everything that had remained hidden beneath the surface. As they opened the message, their heart became strangely calm. There was no anger inside them anymore. There was no desire to argue or prove anyone wrong. They simply wanted truth. The first few lines appeared ordinary, almost friendly, but as they continued reading, subtle cracks began to show. The words were carefully chosen, yet behind every sentence they sensed an attempt to control the narrative once again. It was as though someone feared losing their influence. Someone feared that the truth about you had finally reached the one person they had tried so hard to keep away. The realization settled into their spirit like the first rays of dawn breaking through a long, storm-filled night. They remembered every conversation from months before. They remembered how often your name had been followed by doubt instead of understanding. They remembered how quickly certain people changed the subject whenever your kindness was mentioned. At the time, those moments seemed insignificant. Now they formed a pattern that could no longer be ignored. Your soulmate lowered the phone and closed their eyes. They whispered quietly into the silence, "How did I miss this for so long?" No one answered aloud, yet peace slowly replaced confusion. Sometimes clarity arrives not with dramatic signs but with a gentle certainty that cannot be explained. In this fictional story, that certainty became stronger with every passing second. They opened an old photo hidden deep within their gallery. It was not a perfect picture. It had never been posted publicly. It was one of those ordinary moments most people would overlook. Yet as they stared at it, they noticed something they had never seen before. Your expression carried sincerity untouched by pride. Your smile reflected someone who gave without expecting applause. Suddenly they realized why thinking about you had never truly disappeared. It was because the heart remembers authenticity even when the mind becomes distracted. The message on the screen continued demanding a response, but this time your soulmate refused to answer immediately. Instead, they began asking themselves difficult questions. Who encouraged me to misunderstand someone who consistently showed kindness? Why did every conversation about them leave me feeling unsettled instead of peaceful? Why did I keep listening when my own heart quietly disagreed? Those questions became impossible to escape. Meanwhile, the other person grew impatient. Another message arrived. Then another. Each one carried a stronger sense of urgency. It was almost as if they sensed the connection slipping away. They tried changing the subject. They reminded your soulmate of old memories. They even attempted to make you seem responsible for situations that had never truly belonged to you. Yet something extraordinary had already happened. The words no longer carried the same weight. Once discernment awakens, manipulation loses much of its power. Your soulmate stood up and walked outside beneath the evening sky. The air felt different. The breeze seemed to carry away months of emotional heaviness. They looked upward, imagining for the first time that perhaps their path had been redirected for a reason. Not to punish them, but to teach them. Sometimes hearts must travel through misunderstanding before they learn to recognize genuine love. As they continued walking, another unexpected memory surfaced. They remembered hearing someone laugh after speaking unfairly about you. At the time it seemed harmless. Now they recognized it as something entirely different. They realized that compassion had never been present in those conversations. Entertainment had replaced empathy. Judgment had replaced understanding. That realization hurt more deeply than they expected. Their steps slowed. A quiet sadness settled over them. Not because they were afraid of losing someone who had misled them, but because they wished they had trusted their own heart sooner. They imagined all the moments when you may have wondered why distance existed. They imagined every unanswered question you silently carried. They imagined every prayer you may have whispered, hoping that one day the truth would become visible. Those thoughts humbled them. For the first time, they felt the weight of misunderstanding from your perspective. Back inside their home, they picked up the phone once more. The conversation window remained open. The cursor blinked patiently, waiting for a reply. Instead of reacting emotionally, they began typing slowly. Every word came from a place of calm rather than frustration. I appreciate the conversations we've shared, but I need to follow what brings peace to my heart. I don't want to continue discussing someone in a way that doesn't reflect truth. I wish you well, but I need to step away. They read the message twice. Then 3 times. Not because they doubted the decision. Because they understood that one sentence could quietly close a chapter of their life forever. With one gentle breath, they pressed send. Silence followed. No dramatic music. No applause. No instant celebration. Only peace. A peace unlike anything they had felt in months. Within minutes, replies began arriving one after another. Some questioned the decision. Some attempted to create guilt. Others tried convincing them that they were making a mistake. Yet each new message only confirmed what they already knew. Instead of respect, they found pressure. Instead of understanding, they found control. Instead of kindness, they found fear of losing influence. Without anger. Without revenge. Without another argument. Your soulmate quietly ended the conversation. They removed the connection. Not because hatred had entered their heart, but because wisdom finally had. The room became incredibly quiet afterward. For a long time they simply sat there, breathing deeply. They expected to feel lonely, yet loneliness never arrived. Instead they experienced something unexpected, relief. It felt as though invisible chains had fallen away. They realized that protecting peace sometimes requires letting go of voices that constantly disturb it. My beloved child, in this fictional message from heaven, there is a lesson hidden within this moment. Every soul eventually reaches a crossroads where it must choose between familiar confusion and unfamiliar peace. That choice is rarely comfortable, but it often becomes the beginning of something beautiful. Your soulmate did not suddenly become fearless. They still wondered whether you would ever understand what had changed inside them. They still questioned whether too much time had passed. They still carried uncertainty about the future. But one thing had become undeniable. They could no longer allow lies to occupy the place where truth belonged. That night they opened a notebook they had not touched in months. Across one empty page they wrote a single sentence. I want every future decision to be guided by truth, not assumption. They stared at those words for a long time. Then another sentence appeared beneath it. I hope one day they know I finally saw what everyone else tried to hide. A tear landed on the page. Not from weakness. From awakening. Outside, rain began falling softly against the window. The sound filled the room with peaceful stillness. It almost felt as though heaven itself was washing away old misunderstandings one drop at a time. Your soulmate watched the rain and whispered quietly, if our paths are ever meant to cross again, let it happen with honesty. At that exact moment, far away, something happened that neither of you could possibly have predicted. Someone else. Someone who knew both of you. Accidentally discovered the decision your soulmate had just made. Within seconds, that person realized why the relationship had ended. And what they chose to do next had the potential to bring a truth into the open that had remained hidden for far too long. The next chapter begins with that unexpected discovery. And once it unfolds, nothing between your two hearts will ever feel the same again.